the next panel discussion is about coaching, mentoring, and sponsorship, finding the growth collective. So they're going to together talk to you guys about how to create creative goals and empower and uplift people. So on stage, I'd like to invite Soni Bhattacharya, founder, The Painted Sky, Dr. Vishal Shah, head of talent management and org development, Indegene, Sridevi Raghavan, founder, Tatwamasi, and Namita Kuti, executive coach and partner, Growth Collective. To moderate the session, I'm pleased to invite Bhavna Toor, founder and CEO of Shenomics.
Saying you can't do that. Tied us down, now we combat.
Applause
No
for them.
gem in the face, we about that. Me plus we see the future, gonna get that. Get that. 10 toes in, can you feel that? Feel that? Feel that? Any time of the day, better make way when we pull up. On a new wave when it come up. We got the high end product. Conduct.
Check.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. To build on the conversation that our previous panel began on the importance of community and also building on the theme of Grace Hopper celebration this year, which is me plus we, I want us to talk about how can each of you really think about building that community for yourself? So it's not just me, but you're surrounding yourself with a we that really supports you in the best way possible in helping you move towards the kind of goals that are most important to you. And specifically, so we want to talk about how you can build that dream team. And going off of movie references, imagine you're building your team of Avengers. So you're Iron Man and you're surrounding yourself, or let me say Wonder Woman, and you're surrounding yourself by people who believe in you, who see you, who value you, who are ready to amplify your voice and your work everywhere and ready to fight for you as well. So specifically in your team, we're going to be looking at three individuals: a coach, a mentor, and a sponsor. And just to set the context, a mentor, I think we all understand, is someone who can guide you, who has the relevant experience or expertise and can help you with that. A coach, ideally, is someone who is trained in the art and principles of coaching and can help you bring clarity to your goals and help you take action towards reaching those goals. And finally, we also want to look at sponsorship. And a sponsor is someone who, by definition, is someone senior with influence who can open doors for you, who can help you find opportunities or create opportunities. So before we begin, let's take a pulse in the room and see who is in your community or in your growth collective right now. So show of hands, how many of you would say you have a mentor? Show of hands, how many of you would say you have a mentor? Okay, majority of the room. All right. Look at coach. How many of you have worked with a coach, formally or informally, at some point in your career? Okay, quite a range there as well. And finally, sponsor. How many of you would say you have the support of a senior leader or a senior, powerful, influential individual who is ready to open doors for you? How many of you would say you have a sponsor? Okay, fewer hands, fewer hands. So we'll look at how we can change that with our conversation today. So to set the context, we really want to look at four dimensions of building your growth collective. We want to look at the why, the who, the what, and how. So let's begin with why. As Simon Sinek said, we must always begin with why. So, why Growth Collective? And maybe Namita, we can begin with you. For anyone in the room who is thinking, well, why do I even need to consciously think about this? I have so much on my plate already, and now you're asking me to do one more thing. Why should one think about building a growth collective?
Thank you, Bhavna. I think it's a great question. And for me, the way that I look at it is you look at any big company, they have their own board of directors, right? They advise them, they coach them, they counsel them. So, similarly, for me, I would say each and every one of us should have our own board of directors. I call it my personal board of directors. My name is Namita. I run an organization. Funnily enough, it's called Growth Collective. So, very serendipitous that I'm here. But for me, it's important for me to have that personal board of directors for myself. I do this with all my coaching clients, right? And I help them map out who is your personal board of directors. Who's on that? Do you have a coach? Do you have a mentor? Do you have a sponsor? Do you maybe have a cheerleader? Right? Um, and for me, these roles are so important because they're very, very different. I look at a mentor as somebody as a lighthouse, right? Somebody's just kind of shining a light on you, right? You know which direction to go. A coach for me is like a compass. They guide you, they navigate, right? And a sponsor is a bridge, right? So they connect you, they open doors for you. So that's why it's very important for me. But hey, I do like your Avengers example. So thank you, Bhavna.
Great, thank you, Namita. Sridevi, let's hear from you. I know you're a coach and you've been coaching for many years now. What's your advice, especially to someone who is further along in their career? What is that growth collective, or why should they be thinking about that growth collective?
So I'll start with when I started working. I mean, she was talking about who are the 90s kids here, and that made me feel older because I think I'm the 70s kids that started working when I was in the year 1996. And it was sometime around 2012, about 14, 16 years into my career, that I think I hit a wall. I didn't know which way to go. I didn't know where I had reached. I didn't know what I had wanted. And it was at that point in time that I realized one golden lesson in my life, which I want to share with you today. A job is like a 100-meter sprint. A career is like running a marathon. And to run a marathon, you need all of those qualities that they have mentioned here, which is grit, heart, courage, and intent. And for that, we need professional support. And for me, the professional support started with a healing journey. I went into a Louise Hayes workshop, which taught me to love myself, heal my life, look inwards, look at what are the strengths that I had. Introspected on my own values, my own beliefs, and then I was ready to face the world with what I had. The other thing, especially when Brenda was speaking, I was looking at her statistics. It says that in a 2024 Gallup survey, actually mentions that only 21 percentage of employees are actually engaged, and the lack of inclusion and empathetic leadership is actually costing us about $8.9 trillion to the economy, which is about 9% of the total GDP. I think that is enough to explain why we need all of these as support systems for us.
Absolutely, absolutely. And people who do surround themselves with that growth collective, we find, especially in organizations, since you mentioned, the retention rate is so much higher. That level of engagement is so much higher when you're surrounded by people who believe in you, who see you, who value you. Soni, you're also a coach and have been coaching senior leaders for many years now. Um, why do you feel we need a growth collective?
I think everybody, women and men, need to be in touch with their own strengths, their thoughts, beliefs, baggages, and for women a little bit more. When Brenda mentioned that, if someone's judged you harshly and you have to bounce back and work on it, I feel with women especially that I've seen that they judge themselves much more harshly. So I once had a coachee. She was a senior engineering leader in an organization. And her sponsor was also a woman. And she came and said to me that, the main thing, please work on her because she's become very emotional suddenly. She cries in meetings. She has important client meetings, meetings with peers, and she starts crying. And she was so embarrassed. And when she came to me for coaching, she said, Soni, just help me stop this crying first. Then we'll deal with the other issues. And when I worked with her, after a few sessions, I discovered that she'd been a top performer all her life. But that one time she didn't pass a panel and she did badly and she was judging herself so harshly. So the work that we had to do was on acceptance and forgiveness. How many of us as women, we really struggle in forgiving ourselves? We are very critical of ourselves. We want too much perfection from ourselves. So as women leaders, as we grow, we need to be able to handle these challenges. And that's why you need a coach. You need a mentor, probably in this area, who would, also encourage you to go forward. Then, of talk about sponsorship. Yes. Yeah, so I think that's why it's very important for women leaders to find good coaches, good communities where you can, discover these challenges with self.
No, absolutely. And speaking of reasons why you want to surround yourself with this dream team, and if I was to just offer you a very, very basic reason. So now there've been multiple studies done on what makes us happy. And let's talk about happiness for just a moment. How many of you, just show of hands, how many of you would like to be happier? Right? I mean, we all do. We all do. And yes, everyone on the stage as well. And now there've been multiple studies done on what makes us happy. And specifically, I want to refer to the longest running study on happiness that talks about, at the end of the day, what really makes a difference. Can anyone guess what is the number one thing that really contributes to our happiness? Relationships. Relationships. So all this to say, whether it's success in life or in the workplace, in our careers, um, surrounding yourself with that dream team, whether it's a mentor, a coach, a sponsor, an ally, uh, surrounding yourself with those individuals makes all the difference. So now let's talk about who should be on your team. How do you go about figuring that out? There's this really fascinating book I read last year called Who Not How, and that's just been a game changer for me in my thinking, because coming back to what you said, we do, especially as women, we're conditioned to sometimes overthink things. And whenever we feel stuck, it's so easy to get into that cycle of overthinking or over preparation, or really trying to figure out, okay, how do I get unstuck? And his whole point was, while yes, you can spend a lot of time figuring out how, what's an easier question to answer that can help you get unstuck is, who can help me? Who can help me? So I want to switch to who. um, so Namita, and you are also a coach, and you've worn many hats, of course, over the course of your career. So specifically, a coach, right? Coach is, I mean, it may require significant time,
Yeah,
effort,
of course.
resources
Yes.
to get a coach. So why should one have a coach on their team?
I love that question, right? Hey, it's my bread and butter. I better love that question. So, quick show of hands. How many of us feel that IQ can be increased? Show of hands. You think IQ can be increased? Yeah? Fantastic. All right. How many of us think EQ can be increased? Brilliant. My job is done, Bhavna.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
we're done.
All right. Jokes apart, right? I believe that self awareness is the key, right? And when you look at yourself, particularly as you grow senior, there are two parts to it. One is, what is my identity, right? What does Namita think of herself? That's my identity. Then you have perception. What do other people think of Namita, right? And as you grow senior, unfortunately for a lot of people, that perception starts to become reality for folks around you. So your self awareness is really the highest when your identity and perception kind of merge together. I'm going to link this to what Lalita spoke about in the previous panel, right? Lalita spoke about the fact that, a lot of managers don't even give you feedback fully because they're a little scared. They might be like, oh my gosh, like you said, she might start crying, right? So you may not even get feedback. You may not even know what and how you need to proceed, right? Sri Devi spoke about strengths, right? And for me, right, self awareness is identifying what is your strength, what is your distinctive strength. Distinctive strength is by a lady called Whitney Johnson, a brilliant, brilliant book, right? She talks about it in a book called Disrupt Yourself, where she says your distinctive strength is what you do so well in your sphere that others do not, right? And when you pair that with an unmet need in the organization, is where you go to hypergrowth, right? So for me, the fundamental reason why I would work with a coach is to say, how do I get that self awareness about myself? How do I understand my strengths better? And how do I begin to merge what is my identity and my perception? And that's honestly made a world of difference. If you spend any time with me in the conference, you'll realize I like to talk a lot. Okay, I talk a lot. And that's unfortunate because it took me a long time to realize when I talk so much, I don't give other people a chance. So I'm trying now to talk less, ask more questions. Um, and I think that has really, worked wonders for me. And it's a small example, but for me personally, it's worked wonders. So thank you,
Yeah.
Bhavna.
No, absolutely. I think fi- trying to answer that question of who begins with self awareness, as you said, Namita, an understanding of one's own strengths, one's own sense of, okay, well, what am I trying to achieve at this stage of my life or career? And then you can find the right person who can help you with that. So, Sony, speak to us about mentoring. Um, Even though I think most of the people in the room did raise their hand when I asked who has a mentor. A lot of people, the research also shows not all of us access mentors. So when we're thinking about including a mentor as part of our team, what should we think about? And building off of what Namita said on self-awareness, what role can that mentor play in helping us with that?
Um, okay, so here's what I think. I don't think uh, there can be a very strategic approach because it's so difficult to go up to someone and say, "Hey, will you be my mentor?" Especially if the mentor is, older than you or in the organization higher up in the hierarchy. So how do you go and approach someone and say, "Will you be my mentor?" In organizations, there are programs for mentoring. But for me, if I just look at myself as an individual, how would I select a mentor? It's not that I look at someone and I select a mentor. It's a relationship that's happened, having conversations with people and realizing, hey, this person knows something that I can learn. And through that relationship, I make that move, or I mean, I ask, or to make it formal. Informally, I may think that okay, this so and so is my mentor. So for me, I had a teacher in psychology when I studied therapy for many years, and my teacher's name is P.K. Saru. Everybody knows her in our field, and I met her as a teacher. I learned so much from her, and then she became my mentor. And in our class, everybody's mentor, whoever was open to receiving from her. It wasn't formal, but it was understood. And I think because I wanted to learn from her, that was my way of selecting my mentor. Because I wanted to not only learn the subject, I wanted to learn how she approached life and how I wanted to approach my life. She became my mentor. In an organization, I think we look at skill sets or knowledge that we want to imbibe. And I think just go make a move, go speak. If your organization doesn't have a mentoring program, it's all up to you, then form those relationships. And then a mentor will happen because it's really not easy to go and select a mentor for yourself when you really don't know someone up close. Did I answer? Was this the
Yeah,
question you?
yeah, no,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right.
I also want to hear some stories from Vishal and Devi. What's when you think about your journey, how did you go about? Has there been someone who's been played that instrumental role in your journey, and how did it happen?
I'm going to take it, from the last question that you asked as
Yeah.
to how do you decide and then what did I do? I think what is important for us is to understand where are you at which point in time, and where you are will give you the indication as to who you can choose and what you can do. Because at a point in time when I needed help and I wanted someone to just help me at that point in time, because sometimes there is deep awareness, you're in the bottom of the pit and you're aware that you're in the bottom of the pit, but no amount of reflection can help you at that point in time because you're already there, and then you need a hand to support you, to show you the way, to shine the torch. And at that point in time, you go to a mentor, you go to a consultant, you go to someone with whom you have the easy rapport that you can break down and cry and say that I am lost, I am in the dark, pick me up. So I've had many, many such leaders that I have very, I do not want to use the word unashamedly, but I want to use the word confidently approached. Confident is the word I want to use here, who I have gone to and said, pick me up. Farah, who is right here in the front row, I go to her many times in my coaching journey saying, Farah, I need a hand over here. I don't know if Sai is in the audience. Sai was my first pick me up coach because when is Sai here in the audience? She is there. Okay. When I first walked into solopreneurship, again in 2 months, it was all blindness around me, and I went to her, and then she picked me up from there. Of course, it was a coaching session, but I went to her as a coach mentor. And then when you have this, when you also realize, and many of us hit those spots in our life where there are so many personal events that do drag us down. We call it personal gravity. And when you realize that that gravity is pulling you down, you may want to go to a therapist, you may want to go to a counselor at that point in time, clear the interferences which is coming in your
Yes.
way. And then you reach a spot where you know, now I want to drive. I will look at the rear view mirror because it's important for me to look at the rear view mirror while I'm driving. But that's what a coach does with you.
Yes.
Then the coach is telling, what speed do you want to hit? And let's hit it together. Yeah.
And that's a really really powerful point that Devi just made, that your performance is a function of
Your
your
potential
potential
minus
minus
interferences.
any interferences. And so what these individuals, whether it's a mentor, a sponsor, or a coach, what they're helping you do is either minimize those interferences or navigate those interferences. So speaking of interferences, Vishal, because you're leading leadership development within your organization and driving organizational change. So far we've been talking about how we as individuals can try and identify and find that mentor, coach, or a sponsor. Why is it important for organizations to help women and non-binary individuals in actually building this growth collective? Because we don't want the entire onus of this to only be squarely sit on the shoulders of women themselves. So talk to us a little bit about what role organizations can play.
Sure. So actually, we started this with the example of Miyagi as a coach, a movie that I really like, and that kind of led me to think of another example of this movie, which many of us has seen, Chak De, right? And the way the coach takes a bunch of talented but a ragtag team and shapes that whole team through the journey. I think everyone who's seen it kind of can answer this question as to why it makes so much of a difference, that journey, right? And that's what really happens because, to take the metaphor of a diamond, it's really a lot of us may have a lot of talent, but we need polishing, we need visibility, we need someone to lift us up, as she says. And that's when kind of we start shining the brightest, right? And so obviously these are different roles. Many people sometimes play the same role, right? So I've been fortunate, for example, I've worked with at least three bosses who are like, who have had many HR leaders work with them, and so that itself has kind of had made a lot of difference. And they would have been a mentor for me. Or yeah, so similarly, I think it's important, especially because and I'm sure we discussed in the morning also, right? So there are unique challenges that women face, for example, right? Whether it's about confidence, whether it's the way there are biases, for example, the way feedback is given to women may be different from the way feedback is given to men. Research says that probably the feedback is much more general in nature when it's given to women rather than specific to men, right? So these are probably things that set up the stage a little against women, right? And this whole glass ceiling concept. But at the same time, the organization is losing out, yeah, because uh, decision making, for example, benefits from diversity, innovation benefits from diversity, and finally, a very positive, healthy culture should address all biases, not just gender bias. And so, that also gets help in the process. And these are the reasons why, it's good to have all these roles for women.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Vishal. And I do want to build on the gender component here because let's call out the elephant in the room. This is a women's conference, and yes, and of course for non-binary individuals as well. Um, while it helps anyone to have a growth collective and have those mentors, coaches, and sponsors, should as women should we be doing anything differently? Like what is the gender angle here? Namita, can you touch on that?
Sure. This subject very, very close to my heart, honestly, Bhavna, because from the last 1 year I've been working on this in terms of saying, um, sorry about that, guys, but yeah. So from the last 1 year I've been working on this, which says that how do you have women lead authentically? Right? Because one of the biggest challenges that I see for women in leadership is it's called the double bind. There's a researcher called Alice Eagley, and she coined this term called double bind, which said that to be thought seriously as a leader, you need to be assertive, you need to be independent, you need to be authoritative and outgoing, bold. These are all, words that you typically associate with a leader. When a woman is seen as authoritative and agentic and bold, what do people call her? Do they have very nice words for her? Maybe not, right? And it's really sad, right? Because women, stereotypically, and non binary folks are expected to be warm, nurturing, inclusive, right? And that's a double bind. To be a leader, you need to be more, it's called more agentic, right? When you're more authoritative, you're more controlling, you're more independent and commanding. You're called agentic. That's what is needed. But women are expected to be warm and nurturing and nice. So the research that I've been working on for the last 1 year is how do you balance these two? And it needs to be balanced, right, Bhavna? You need to be agentic in certain situations. If the building's on fire, you can't be like, hey, please, maybe step out. You're going to be like, hey, step out, the building's on fire. But if you're dealing with Gen Z, if you're working with Gen Z, if you're building a company, you're building a product, you want to motivate your team, you have to be nurturing, you have to be inclusive, right? So there's a subtle balance that we're working on, but that balance is so much more for women, right? Sorry, Vishal, but I do think the world is a little easier for men, not teaming on the soul gentlemen on the panel. But I think that's where I feel as women, we have to navigate the double bind and then move forward.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. The double bind is real, and we've all had to navigate that in our own ways. And that's where I'd like to actually bring in sponsorship once again, because what the research does show is a sponsor can help you navigate the double bind, help you navigate other biases in the organization, and help you get ahead. And also, what the research shows is women are over mentored and under sponsored. And I think we saw this at the beginning when I asked the question, how many of you have mentors? I think a lot of you raised your hands, and only a handful of you said you have a sponsor. So this is something we need to do something about. So this is an important conversation I do want to have with everyone on the panel in terms of how can we move the dial there? Because Again, I'm just going to throw out one more statistic. Women who are sponsored are twice as likely to get promoted as compared to women who are not sponsored. So that's how important it is that we do have the support of this individual. How do we get the support of this individual? Vishal, can you help us um, demystify this?
Sure. Uh, firstly, since you said that, let's talk about the elephant in this room. I think, like it or not, the fact also remains that sometimes even women leaders have the same biases against women. Yeah? And it's important to recognize that. Okay?
True.
Uh,
Yeah.
I think the way to get any sponsor, right? Uh, it starts with first the quality of your performance and output. Yeah, you stand out because of that. Um, the debate on gender and merit are not mutually exclusive; they go together, right? So you start with merit, and that's where a senior person sees that there is value in investing time in you, giving that visibility, giving opportunities, and spending time also mentoring you sometimes, because many times these are common. And I think women probably need to take a more one more step ahead and ask for it. And when they ask for it, I've seen that they usually get it. Probably men get it a little easier in that sense, because if they are noticed, someone may step up and kind of sponsor them. Women may need to ask for it, and I've seen that work also, right? So and I think these are some of things. So you actually first start with merit, you show your this thing. Then the kind of sponsor actually sees that there is value in investing you and making you visible. And I think these are some of the kind of things that make it
Um, Devi, since you're a coach, let me put it to you this way. So let's say I'm a senior woman leader, right? I come to you. I recognize this is important and I want to do something about this. But I also have, for whatever reason, I have some reservations around this as well. And in particular, I have all these thoughts around, but you know, who I mean, other than figuring out who can be this individual, will this person make time for me? Or I'm thinking, I'm more of an introvert. How do I even initiate this conversation, and how do I talk about myself in a way that sounds like I'm not bragging? So I have a whole host of reservations. How would you, as a coach, what would be your advice or process to help me break out of this resistance?
Thank you for that question, because even when both of them were speaking about the ceiling and all of that, I have a request to make here. Can we all stop speaking about the glass ceiling anymore? Because I do think that that's a personal ceiling that we have all created. What if it was not there? It's history, and today we are sitting here and rewriting history. Um, we have not seen this kind of sponsorship coming up when we were coming up. So, career is today a privilege that has been granted to us with a lot of hard work that women have done previously for us. And so, if this is what a woman leader who comes to me thinks, then
Yeah.
I would once again invite her to think about, where is this belief coming from? Who is coming in her way? Is it her own sabotage, or is it reality? And now to say, if this is how my conditions are, what do I do to overcome this condition? Because the same woman, if it was a different personal battle, would bring up all her resources and energy to fight it out. So, what makes the woman feel that that is a different story and this is a different story? It's high time that we rewrote our narratives. We belong here. Diversity is not a feature that we are trying to achieve. Diversity is a lack that we are trying to fill. It is the law of nature for the yin and yang to exist together. And we will all have to move together to try and see that we completely cut off these narratives
Right.
and see how can we all come together
Yes.
and build a better world.
Yes. Yes. Great. Well said. Well said. Sony, if we can look at the other side of the equation as well. So and again, because you're a coach, I'll frame it to you. If if you're advising or coaching male leaders, because the ownership lies as much on them to pull all leaders, not just male leaders, to pull up the women in the organization, as much as it is on the women to, as Vishal said, raise their hand and ask for it. What would be how would you approach that?
Um, a lot of so if there's senior women leaders in this group here, then I would ask them to look at programs or look at ways to help and promote other women who are coming up. While I understand a lot of the fight is internal, a lot of fight is external too. And that's why we have the concept of equity now that's coming in along with equality and inclusion. The fact is that women do have certain other specific challenges that men don't have in their lives, in their life cycles. And because of certain challenges, these specific challenges, they tend to lose out. So there needs an individual woman can cannot fight all by herself. She needs programs, she needs allyship, she needs leaders, men or women, and she needs an organization that is invested in bringing women up, that can tweak the policy a little bit. I know there's a lot of conversation now on meritocracy, and anybody with merit should be given the chance. But people come up to merit. People are not born with merit. And I think that if we don't give chances to those who are slightly behind, and in this context, when we're talking about women, when they're slightly behind, I mean, if you come back from maternal leave, you've missed a chance of your promotion cycle for that year. So there has to be a lot of thought which comes from the org perspective when we're talking about sponsorship. A lone woman alone cannot. She can fight her inner battles, but there are the external realities, and she'll need help. She'll need support from people.
Yeah.
So, to all the male leaders, there are hardly any males in the room here, but I think that consideration needs to be brought in for them, that, it's not the same. I mean, I know I have thrived, I think, in my career because of my husband. Uh, my internal battles were lesser because of my father, my grandfather. Um, but I think I can attribute a lot of my success to my husband. And if I didn't have that, and I would have needed a lot more from the environment. So this challenge exists. Sponsorship is needed. Organizations need to do it, and really help women and give a little bit of a leeway is what I believe. A
Yeah.
leeway is little bit of a laxity in terms of certain policies is needed. And I work with clients, organizations who are doing that, who are standing their ground strongly with full conviction in what they're doing. There's a lot of criticism internally. There's a lot of criticism in the world right now, and I see there's lots happening against DEI now. And I was like, wow, when did that happen? And but I work with organizations who are standing their ground and are doing everything that they can to support because they believe in it. And they don't only believe that to be because it's I mean, you're creating a better society, but I think you're also creating a better organization. You're creating better innovation. So you need to be there for them. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And yes, while they're not, I don't see a lot of male leaders in the room. I do see a lot of women leaders. And while I shared earlier that when you are, when you have a mentor and a sponsor, you're much more likely to get promoted. Equally, if you're the kind of person who's stepping up and paying it forward, so you are a mentor and sponsor for somebody else, you are also more likely to get promoted. So yes, while it's mostly women in the room, there's a lot we can do to help each other, to pay it forward, to support each other, and especially if you're a senior person in the room, there's so much you can do to pull up and really support the other women in the room. So, with that, I do want to bring this to a close, and I'd love to go around and have everyone share what would be your one actionable advice to everyone in the room in terms of what they can do today to start building their growth collective. Who would like to go first? Let's start with Sridevi. Yeah.
Invest in yourself, build mental fitness.
All right. Invest in yourself. Mental fitness. Soni.
Get yourself a coach.
Get yourself a coach, and you have, including myself, four coaches on the panel. So you have take your pick. Vishal.
I would say don't undermine yourself and don't undersell yourself. So that
Okay.
would.
Don't undermine yourself. Don't undersell yourself.
I'd say I love tiny habits. So, you've listened to all of us. Pick any small thing that struck you, make it a tiny habit. Maybe if it's being more assertive, it's asking for a mentor. Any small thing, just pick one thing that you will look to do. Thank you.
All right. Fantastic. We're nearly out of time, but maybe we can take a few questions. So if anyone has any questions for anyone on the panel, I see one hand is raised. Can we get her a mic, please?
Thank you, everyone. This session was very insightful. My question is to all of you. Have you ever experienced imposter syndrome? If so, then how did you deal with it?
Who would like to take that? I think we
We
all have a
cannot
lot to
take.
say about imposter syndrome, but Soni,
I think
I'll
all
let
the
you.
time, all the time. You have to have a lot of self-talk. And one of the ways I dealt with it was by actually at that moment when I had that hijack of feeling like an imposter, is to remind me of my skills, my resources, my accomplishments, the work that I've done, and that kind of calmed that voice down.
Sridevi?
You could remember this. There's always an inner critic inside you. There's also an inner mentor who lives inside you. Every time the critics speaks up to you. The critic is always black and white. The critic is always telling you things which is very harsh. Thank the critic because the critic is trying to help you. Okay, it's trying to protect you. So thank the critic and then switch to the mentor and ask the mentor within yourself, what would you now advise me to do? And that's a great exercise to keep your imposter syndrome down. But it never goes away. It's
Yeah.
always there. It just gets the degree of influence reduces.
I'd probably just add that, when this happens and it keeps happening, I go back and think of some of what is the worst challenge that I've faced and how did I get through that, right? And then if I could have gotten through that and I walk myself, it's called the hero's journey. It's beautiful. But if I can walk through that and if I get through that, then I can definitely get through the next step. Yeah. So thank you.
All right. I see. Yeah. Uh, in the back, can we take one more question in the back?
Hi, hi panel members. It was a wonderful session. I had one small question. We talked about um showing yourself as meritorious to best highlight yourself as like potential for mentorship. How exactly to do that? Because if you're at like a like per se, if you were a software engineer one, how can you show your like merit to suppose like a technical lead or a principal engineer?
Okay. Is the question how can you show yourself as meritorious to a? Sorry,
Yes.
we couldn't. Okay. So I'll just say one thing here. The way to position yourself, whether it's to a senior mentor, senior sponsor, when you're talking about your work, talk about the impact of your work. So look at your achievements, and in particular, you want to ask yourself, how is my work helping to move the dial when it comes to the topmost priorities of my team and my organization? When you can connect the dots between the work you are doing and what the organization or your team deems to be the most strategically important, that is what really strongly positions you as a powerful and as an impactful contributor in the organization. So, my biggest advice would be make really clearly connect those dots and talk about not just the work, but the impact of the work through the perspective of the individual that you are speaking to.
No, I think that's great advice. I would also say try and take as many opportunities as possible. Don't just stick to what you've been given. It's like, my boss liked to say that we get salary for what we've been asked to do, but to get promoted, you have to do something extra, right? And so kind of to keep asking yourself, okay, what is the extra that I'm doing? And how can I then show it, right? So
All right, and let's see how successful we've been in convincing everyone to build this growth collective. Let me ask this question once again. How many of you are now ready to take that next small step to build your growth collective? Show of hands. How many of you are ready to take that next small step? All right. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Namita. Thank you, Vishal. Thank you, Sridevi. And thank you, Soni, for
And
helping
thank you,
us
Bhavna.
demystify
Thank you.
building your growth collective.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. You've been a lovely audience. Thank you.
See the future gonna get
All
there.
right.
Get
Oh my
there.
God, so many truth bombs, and everybody seems to be giving you guys homework.
Better make
All right. Can you guys stay back for a moment? Can I invite Saumya Dandapani, the session chair? Are you here, Saumya? Are you here? Ah, all right. So then I'm going to do. Saumya, are you here? Raise of hand. You're not here. Okay, I'm going to do the honors of probably because it's time for lunch. Saumya, probably the next time. Thank you so much. Fantastic
You're
session.
about to break that chain of thought that forcing you can't do that. Tigers down, now we combat. New gen in the face, we about that. Me plus we see the future, gonna get that. Get that.
All right.
Ten
Thank
toes
you,
in, you feel
speakers.
that? Feel that? Feel that?
You guys want to take? Yeah. Is there a pic you guys want to take? Are we good? We good? All right. All right. All right, so probably quick two sentences from me just before we break for lunch. So I myself have been a mentee for somebody who's my life coach as well. So one thing that he taught me was while he mentored me, there were a lot of things that he learned himself. So go looking for your mentees as well, not just for your mentors. There might be people who are looking out for opportunities and you may be able to make a change in their lives as well. And as women leaders, please make sure that when you're setting up policies for your firms, make sure that you speak up for all the women out there. Okay, at that note, we are going to break for lunch. It's going to be a 1 hour break. Lunch is served at halls 1, 2, and 3. Please be back at 1:40. What time is it? 1:40ish.